me start recording. Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mark Phillip, and I'm an application engineer at Studica Incorporated. And a little bit about Studica, just for some background. We're a reseller of many software and hardware platforms. And we primarily deal with schools in North America. So this could range from K through 12 up to higher education. And today we're going to be talking about Toon Boom software and kind of who Toon Boom is, what software they have, what sort of deals there are, what offers there are for schools, and why we feel that this software is great for animation programs or 2D like animation art programs and things like that. So if you need to contact me for any reason, my information is markp@studica.com. And you can also see our website at www.studica.com. So yeah, we'll go ahead and jump into it. Oh, there we go. So a bit of background about Toon Boom, because some people may not know who they are. Basically, they're a software developer, and they primarily make software in the realm of like 2D animation, storyboarding, and things like that. So a lot of software that's used in the animation industry, even in like the VFX, 3D effects realm as well. So they are industry standard. Their software is used in quite a number of studios around the world, and it is also used quite heavily in a lot of higher education institutions nowadays. Before I kind of jump into the specific products, I always like to give some motivation from like the economic side of things here and talk a bit about what kind of like career opportunities there are for students who are looking to go into this field. The thing is, nowadays, there's actually a lot more opportunities than there used to be for people who have a skill set in things like animation or 2D animation, storyboarding, and things like that. And this is largely because of the digitization of so much content and the fact that so many things are done through like social media and through computers nowadays. There's a large need now for people to visualize information, and some of the tools that are often used for that are these animation tools. And so Toon Boom software kind of fits in that realm. And as a result of kind of this diversification of, how we interact with each other through the internet and everything, we're seeing a lot more job opportunities now open up for students who are going into things like multimedia animation. So these are just some of the different kind of job titles that are related to this field. And kind of with the hard numbers, I took data from the US Department of Labor. So this is specifically United States statistics here. If you're in Canada or somewhere else, I can't quite speak to that. But at least in the US, when I looked for multimedia artists and animators, what we're actually seeing is the job outlook is in a positive 10% over the next 10 years, well, more like the next 7 years now. But basically, it's growing faster than average than most other careers. So this is kind of interesting to me because additionally, the National Center for Education Statistics had found that visual and performing arts are the 10th most conferred bachelor's degrees nationwide. So kind of what that tells me is there's not, like doing visual and performing arts is not quite as popular as some of the other degrees out there, but there's actually a lot more opportunity coming up in the future for people who are studying that field. So basically, there's going to be a lot of demand for skilled laborers in this field, right? People who know this technology, people who know the theory behind animating and doing art and things like that. And so making sure that your students are prepared for that, they're going to be in a prime position when they graduate to really find a lot of potential opportunities for work. So yeah, I always kind of like to start off with that motivation. What can our students be expecting when they're graduating? Why do we think that it's important to be teaching these things to these students at the moment from an economic perspective? So let's look at what Toon Boom Harmony is. So Toon Boom Harmony is basically a 2D animation program that Toon Boom created. And it comes in 3 different versions: Essentials, Advanced, and Premium. And we're going to kind of look at what all these versions have in common, and then we're going to look at what each version has that is kind of different from the others. So between all the versions of Harmony, you get access to your main core features, which are listed here. You can do inking, painting, rigging, and animating. You pretty much have to have those to have an animation program. So any version of Harmony you get will be able to do those core features. Additionally, you get compositing and special effects tools. You also have access to vector tools, so you can generate vector images instead of just like bitmap images. That's increasingly popular with like the web nowadays, right? Creating images and things like that for the web. Additionally, you can export directly to game engines. So this actually makes Harmony a good tool for game development as well, or like students who might be looking to be game artists, like sprite artists, or just in general 2D game artists and things like that. Specifically, you can export it like directly into the Unity game engine, for instance, which is a very widely used and popular game engine, especially in the mobile space. And then lastly, you can export to pretty much all your common file formats for still images and video. So if you want to export like PNG, TGA, JPEG, BMP, if you want to do video like H.264 codec, for instance, for HD, you can do all of that. Now, where they start to differ is kind of in some more particular areas. So Harmony Essentials is kind of the entry-level version of the software. And basically what you're getting here is essentially what I just described. You're getting the bare bones version of the software. This is good for people who maybe have, they just need to make simple animations and things like that. Nothing too heavy, nothing too advanced. This could be an ideal situation for maybe a more introductory level course, or students who maybe have never really touched 2D animation software before and they're trying to get familiar with it. But basically, you get the features we just described and really not much else. The screenshots I took here of the drawing and animation toolbars, and this is just to kind of compare with Harmony Advanced right here, where I took screenshots of the same thing but in the different program. And you notice that these have expanded a bit. And so with Harmony Advanced, you get everything Essentials has, and then you add on like morphing, onion skinning, and some extra timeline functionality. So for instance, we see that there's a morphing call out here, a lip sync call out, linear motion, no Z dragging. Over in the drawing tools, we can create color art from line art, and a couple of different features that were not in the Essentials version. So basically, if you're looking for something a little more advanced, a little more intermediate, this is probably the place to look. Just to give you an idea, an example of onion skinning is here on the left. And the idea with onion skinning is you can look at your current frame of animation, which is the fully colored ballerina here in the center. You can see it within the context of the previous frames here on the left and the subsequent frames, which are here on the right. So that's something you get specifically with the advanced version that's not in the Essentials version. Now, Harmony Premium takes everything Essentials and Advanced has and then adds more stuff to it, basically. So this is essentially the pro level version of the software. This is what studios in the industry are most likely using because it offers you the most robust tool set to do anything you really want to do. So you can create a lot more sophisticated rigs with Harmony Premium. So there's a lot more tools for doing rigging. There's also curve and envelope deformers for performing more like organic character animations. And there's also like, you can also bring in 3D models now with Harmony Premium. So if you have, say, like 3ds Max, Blender, Cinema 4D, whatever program you like to use, you can bring your OBJ file into Harmony Premium and actually incorporate it with your 2D scene. So this can create a pretty interesting workflow, like especially if you're in this realm where you maybe have students who are working in 3D modeling and students who are doing 2D modeling and trying to get them to collaborate or come together and work on something. This could especially be true in like the game realm, for instance, doing video games. Oftentimes you'll have things like that where you're combining 3D, 2D models. Additionally, you get access to the node-based compositing tree, which is what I have a screenshot of here. And people who have maybe used other animation modeling software, you might be familiar with something like this. But this is actually kind of a newer thing with a lot of software nowadays where more and more programs are starting to implement basically trees like this where you can connect your layers together, put your like effects in a specific order, connect them to different nodes, set up your rigging and things like that. It's a very powerful feature. It's only included in the premium version. There's a bit of a learning curve, but it's not too bad. And once you have familiarity with it, it's really quite powerful. So definitely something that makes the premium version stand out compared to advanced and essentials. So that's kind of the very big picture look of Harmony. 2D animation software, 3 different versions, and kind of just broke down the main differences between them. Now we're going to look at Storyboard Pro, which is exactly like it sounds, as a storyboarding software. So basically helps you with pre-production, helps you visualize your storyboard and get you into the production phase smoother. So this GIF I have here is basically just to kind of give you a look at what the program actually looks like and sort of how it operates. You have like your timeline at the bottom where you can look at all your different shots and run it at however many FPS you want. You have your layers here, and just like a lot of other animation or like drawing programs, graphics programs, anybody who's used those is familiar with the concept of layers. And then you have like all your tools pretty much all around your program. What I like to point out is that Storyboard Pro, this user interface is almost exactly what Harmony's interface looks like. The only difference is that you have some different tools here on like the left and across the top. But in general, Harmony looks almost exactly like this. And so what's nice is if you know how to use one program, or not necessarily how to use it, but if you're kind of familiar with the layout of one program, then it's a lot easier to kind of jump into the other program because the layouts are incredibly similar. So if I know how to use like Storyboard, for instance, then making a jump into Harmony is not going to be too difficult for me. So the main features of Storyboard Pro are that you can actually incorporate your scripts into the software. So if you have, for instance, Final Draft, which is like industry standard screenwriting software, you can actually export your script out into Storyboard Pro. And what Storyboard Pro will do is basically create a project for you that has all of your like shots and transitions and like scene changes and things like that set up for you based on what's written in your screenplay. Additionally, all of the text from your screenplay gets brought into Storyboard Pro, so you can actually see everything in one program, so it's all like consolidated. Additionally, you can do real-time playback like we just saw in that GIF, where I can actually go through the timeline and watch everything play out in real time. I can also export the video out, export the storyboard out as a video into like the H.264 codec, which is a HD 1080p codec. And then I can also create camera movement, which is one of my favorite features. So you can really visualize your camera blocking for pre-production. So if you want to look at like what might a zoom or a pan or a tilt look like on this specific part, you can actually like animate that and visualize that and see how it looks. There's also collaboration tools built into the software. So what this looks like is basically you have your project and maybe you have like a leader on the team. They'll take the project and run the collaboration tool. It splits it up into sections. You hand those sections off to different team members. They kind of work on it on their own, and their changes aren't affecting what everybody else is working on. And then when they're done, they bring it all back to, say, the team lead. The team lead combines them all together in the collaboration tool. That's not exactly how it works. That's kind of like the idea of how it works, but it definitely makes it a bit easier to actually work with other people with the software, which is nice in the school setting where you might be encouraging students to be doing team projects or group projects to try and prepare them for, a future career in the industry where they likely will be working with other people. Having the ability for them to really not have to wrangle with like how they're going to effectively collaborate and just be able to use these tools that kind of handle that question for them. That's certainly a benefit. And then lastly, we have pipeline integration with a lot of video editing software. So Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, and Avid. You can basically bring your exported file, like your H.264 file of the storyboard out into like Final Cut, for instance, and do what you want with it. If you want to look at maybe a more advanced transition between like a scene that you can't quite get in storyboard, or maybe you want to play around with a color grade in pre-production, you could do that. So that's kind of the big picture look of Storyboard. And now we kind of want to look at, adopting these programs and what's that curve look like, because there's always this learning curve involved with taking on any new program where there's always that period that feels really slow and maybe a little awkward to get yourself up to speed with some new software, but then you see some payoff later, right? So we'd like to look at, how does Toon Boom actually support this? Like if I'm an instructor and I need to teach this software and I have no idea about it, like are there resources for me, right? So there's both paid and free options. And we'll first talk a bit about the paid professional development, which is something you can pay for where you basically get a half day, a full day, or up to 1 week of training with somebody from Toon Boom. So basically this is a very hands-on situation where you're working with somebody who knows this software inside and out, and they'll work with you to get you up to speed with everything. You can ask them questions, pick their brain. If you want to do something specific, they'd probably be able to tell you exactly how to do that. So that's certainly an option to get yourself up to speed. There's also a lot of free resources that Toon Boom provides, which I'm a big fan of. Not least of which because it is free, but because they're actually very robust as well. So I'm going to take a look here at the Learn portal from Toon Boom. So this is in my browser. I'm just in Chrome right now. And this website is completely free to access, called learn.toonboom.com. And you could go there whenever you want. You could go there right now if you wanted to and take a look. You don't have to have an account on here, but if you do have an account, it will track your learning progress and things like that. And the account's free to make if you want to. But basically, the site is just hundreds of hours of tutorial content for Harmony and Storyboard Pro. So if I go up to the Journeys section here, I'm going to see basically what they call journeys, which I use the analogy of textbooks. A journey is basically like a textbook, right? It's some big book of knowledge about a specific topic, and within that book you have sections about the topic, right? So that's kind of what journeys are like. They're like a textbook. And I can filter up here near the top right. So say I want to look at like beginner level stuff. I'm new to Harmony and I just want to like figure out what's going on here. I can check the beginner section. I can do like Harmony Kickstart, right? This is basically going to have a couple different courses in here, 3 different courses, one for Essentials, Advanced, or Premium. So maybe I want to do just Essentials Kickstart. And in here, there's going to be a number of what they call modules. And these are kind of like chapters, right, in your textbook. So there's one about just creating a project and kind of getting used to the user interface. There's another in here about how to use the basic drawing tools. So I'm going to click on this one. And inside of here, we have a number of specific lessons. And each one kind of tells you how long they expect the lesson to take. Additionally, you can download the material that's used in this lesson by the person who's basically doing the tutorial. So if you want to follow along with their project, they basically package the project up here. So it's in a zip file. You download it, you can extract it, and then open it up in Harmony and see everything the person presenting sees. See everything that they created, and then you can follow along with them. So for instance, if we click using the drawing tools, we're going to kind of come in here and there's going to be this YouTube video, which is the tutorial. So kind of skip around just to check this out. But basically what we have is somebody who is like a professional with the software. It's showing us like how to do certain things. And for some reason my thing isn't quite loading here, but kind of just skip around and show you. But basically it's them showing you like, here's what the pen tool does, here's what the pencil tool does, here's how you change your colors, here's how you like paint a texture and things like that. And the people who deliver this content are generally either people who work directly with Toon Boom and know the software really well, or they're people who work in the industry either for themselves or for some studio who use this in a professional capacity. So you're seeing people who know what they're doing with the tools and teaching you best practices. Additionally, a lot of the videos, this one in particular doesn't, but a lot of these also have written instructions, like step-by-step instructions. So if you have like YouTube blocked, for instance, on your campus or something, you can still read the text-based version of what they're talking about here. Additionally, if you're signed into an account, you can actually take these like quick multiple choice quizzes that basically ask you some very broad questions about the material you just watched. So kind of help you quiz yourself on your knowledge, make sure you got what you needed to out of the video. And yeah, so that's basically this whole site is set up this way. So there's a lot of different journeys about a lot of different topics. So whether you're looking at like rigging or just general animating or, you know, modifying color palettes and things like that, there's going to be topics for this all over the site somewhere. So specifically, you can do a search as well. So maybe you're curious about something like, maybe I want to look up like rigging. I can just do a search and find all sorts of results here about rigging. Like this rigging artist is a journey, which is going to teach me everything I need to know about rigging and harmony. So, really just anything you can think of, you can basically come in here and search for it if you have a question about it. But it's really a great resource to get yourself up and running, and it's well maintained, really easy to navigate, completely free to use. So highly recommend that if you are interested in the free learning options. I also highly recommend it if you're just curious about the software in general, because it's a great way to actually look at the software being used and kind of what features it contains or what sort of capabilities it has and maybe what limitations it has as well. So yeah, I highly recommend taking a look at that site because it costs you nothing to look at. And if you're interested in the software, it might help give you some insight onto what you'd be getting out of the program. So I've mentioned this many times, but the software is industry standard. And so I always like to point out some of the big studios that currently use Toon Boom in some capacity in their pipeline. You got like Universal, Lucasfilm, NBC. These are some really big studios, and this is not by any means every studio using the software. There's a lot more than this. It's just these are some of the big names we put on this slide. But the point is that teaching your students this tool or set of tools is just another way to kind of get them a leg up when they go to look for work in their postgraduate life, if that's what they're going to be doing. Some of the productions that have used Toon Boom in some capacities are just some pretty big name ones that come to mind. And it's also important to note that the software is not only used for like 2D animation all the time, it's also used sometimes for VFX work and things like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just about how do you prepare your students, right, for being successful, and whether their career is in the private sector or whether they're going to go on to like a graduate school or something like that. Giving them their tools, giving them access to these tools, letting them learn them, and providing them the resources they need to excel with it is just going to help them be a more well-rounded candidate, I should say, for whatever it looks like they're going to want to go do. And again, this is just one tool in the toolbox. A lot of these studios, for instance, are not just using Toon Boom, right? Like they're using a lot of different programs to make their work happen. And this is just one of those tools. And the more familiar your students are with this, variety of tool sets that they need to use, then the more capable they're going to be to a potential recruiter, or the better it's going to look on their resume and things like that. So with that, I'll go ahead and say if you do have any questions about anything, feel free to use the Q&A panel or use the chat feature to ask those questions. And while I wait for any potential questions, I'll just go ahead and say if you want to see what we have to offer from Toon Boom for schools, you can go to our website, www.studica.com. And I would just use our search bar and search for Toon Boom, and you should find all of our Toon Boom offerings. And those are specifically school licenses. And so, any pricing and stuff you see there is basically for schools. If you wanted to talk to somebody directly, you can also reach us at 888-561-7521. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Additionally, if you wanted to talk to somebody in the sales department, maybe ask them about, like grant funding or whatever it might be, maybe you have questions about something. Our sales reps know quite a lot about the software, and they also know a lot about navigating like school budgets and things like that. So if you do want to speak to anybody directly in sales, feel free to reach us at sales@studica.com and ask any questions you might have. Additionally, we will also be following up with everybody who attended. We'll be sending a follow-up email that contains some extra information as well as a recording of this presentation. So if you feel like you want to share this presentation with anybody, feel free to do so. There's no restriction there. It's free for you to throw around. So I'm not seeing any, let's see. Not seeing any questions or anything, so I'll probably give it another 10, 15 seconds here, see if I get anything. All right. Well, with that, I'll just say thank you all for joining us and be on the lookout for the follow up email. And again, if you want to share this recording, feel free to do so. And I hope you all have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thank you.